Once upon a time, two boys grew up playing hockey in the village of Terrace, British Columbia. One of them went on to play in the National Hockey League. The other became a comedian. Now, one flies planes and coaches youth hockey. The other is still a comedian and owns newsstands. This is their podcast, Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian.
It is Tuesday. June. No, it's not June. It's May. I don't know. I'm all messed up. Anyways, we're starting the show. It's called Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian. My name is Ian. The other guy is Jeff. He's been to a hockey game. I haven't, for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Jeff, you went to the game the other night. Tell everybody how exciting it was.
Yeah, I went. Actually, I've been able to get to the first two games.
You been to both?
Yeah, I went to both. I wasn't planning on going Sunday, but Randy dragged me down there, so I went. And yeah, so I took Scott. We had a great time, but and people are like, "Who's Scott?" And he's a friend. He's a friend of ours, but good guy. Actually, Scott is part of Spiegel World, so we'll get our Spiegel World plug in early today.
Make sure when you're in Vegas, go see Absinthe or it's Neon Saloon, right? Neon Saloon. I keep calling it the wrong thing.
No, yeah, that's like kind of like
Atomic
Columbus
Saloon.
in the Western Conference. It's the Atomic Saloon. So we went down on Sunday. I got my earpiece in here today because my computer's not with me, but not that it makes a difference. Like I've got this big audio video set up, but yeah. So the last three Vegas Golden Knights home games I've been able to go to, game 5 against Edmonton, game 1 and 2 against Dallas. And Dallas played really well in game 2. They were kind of probably a little hungover, I think, from the Seattle series for part of game 1. Then they got going. Vegas was flying. But, these two teams are pretty evenly matched. Dallas really got going in game 2, looked really good. Kind of had a little bit of they had a little pause in their game there near the end of the game, and Vegas was able to capitalize. But what I took from it was how, like, these guys are flying. Like, the hockey's really, it's fantastic. It's so hard on the boards. These guys are working hard. It's pretty physical. But I just want to back up just for 1 second because Rope Hintz is unreal. Like, this guy is kind of like McDavid Draisaitl, kind of a hybrid. But when you watch guys bring the puck up the ice compared to what Connor McDavid does, it's insane the difference that McDavid pace and quickness that he has over everybody else. And I'm sure, I've seen McKinnon quite a bit. I'm sure Nathan McKinnon's very similar. But I remember when McDavid grabbed the puck, the whole building would just panic, right? and he'd skate through everybody. Again, Dallas, he just didn't have as much as ease of zone entry as Edmonton does with McDavid. So just a little tip of the hat to McDavid here before we move on again about how special he is. But
especially is while he watches the rest of the Stanley Cup happen.
Yep, he's at home, and I really believe. If you look at the 4 teams left, the reason they're all still here is obviously they've got really high-end players, but they play their depth, and their depth is a big part of their team. So, anyways, the building, it was crazy for game 1 and 2, and it just went nuts when Marchessault scored to tie it up. So
it must have been really fun to be there. I think that series will go much longer than the other series that's going on. Carolina is the team that we spoke of last round, that they were going to have some scoring problems, and boy, are they having some scoring problems this round.
Yeah.
I got a question for you. How does 4 overtime periods affect you the rest of the series? It's got to affect you somehow.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, if you win it, right, like Florida did, and they just go happily along their way. But Carolina is still, digging out from that. And I thought Carolina played really well in game 3, and they're down 3-0. It just seems like they're up against a brick wall. But you got to give Florida credit defensively. They're playing just fantastic. They're playing with an edge. And it's kind of funny. The refs have kind of let him play a little over the line at times and not penalized him for it. I think Carolina's probably a little frustrated with that too. But Bobrovsky's really the story right now of the playoffs. And but there's a lot of belief in Florida too. And Paul Maurice has done an unbelievable job. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that series, see if Carolina can get it back for Game 5. But I certainly think that the quadruple overtime game took a lot of the air out of the Carolina Tires.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Say Florida wins the whole Stanley Cup and has a parade. What happens in Winnipeg? Is it proved that it's not the coaches, it's now the players' fault? Because we're only 1 year out of Paul Maurice leaving Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think if you looked at it, you would probably say that Winnipeg at times when Paul was there was probably a more complete team than Florida. But Florida's playing like it's more of a team, I think, and getting a lot more of guys that you wouldn't expect. They've all bought in. I mean, if you think about their defense, you've got Forsling, who was a Vancouver Canuck draft and kind of bounced around a little bit. He's caught on. He's playing 25 minutes a night. You've got Montour, who was in Anaheim. Then he went to Buffalo. They picked him up. He's having a career year. Gudas gives him some grit back there. Mahura is playing well. Ekblad's playing well. And Mark Stahl's coming over from Detroit. I think it's Mark. There's 3 of them in the series, but I think it's Mark that's in. And he's played fantastic. And so, those guys, their identity is, and Reinhardt said it best when they summed up how he would explain their success. And he said, simple, just keeping it simple. And that's what we talk about every day. Keep it simple. So
keep it simple, stupid. We have a guest waiting for us today. Our guest is NHL legend Randy Burridge. I think he lives in Vegas now, doesn't he? Doesn't he live in Vegas?
Yep. So I see Bridge. I call him Bridge. Everybody else calls him Stumpy. No, Sharps, you're the only guy that calls me Bridge. So Bridge and I played against each other, but one of my most memorable experiences in my career was the 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks I spent as his roommate in Detroit's training camp. That was one for the ages. He's an awesome guy. He's in Vegas. He's part of the Vegas Golden Knights alumni, along with the rest of us that are in town, thanks to Derek England and Shane Knighty and those guys bringing all the guys that used to play in. So I see Bridge at the Golden Knights. I see him at the games from time to time, but I see him at the events. And then once in a while, we'll just go play golf.
What do you say we see him right now?
Let's do it. Okay.
He's brought to you by Heady Gear. Heady Gear, go to headygear.com. Get yourself a discount by using the code BAG. Get yourself a backpack. Put your swag on the back to check it all out. Thanks, Brett Hedican, for having backpacks for us to talk about. Let's go to the interview. Today's guest is sadly stuck in a place with no internet, so we got him on the phone. He was drafted by the Boston Bruins, and he played in the hockey league called the NHL for a very long time, ended with Buffalo Sabres, and played for the Hanover Scorpions. We'll have to talk about that, the Hanover Scorpions. Please welcome Randy Burridge. Hello, Randy.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
So you live in Vegas now. What do you do?
Hanover Scorpions. What's that?
Yeah. Well, you live in Vegas now, right?
Yeah, I retired out here. I played for the Thunder the last year, and then that team folded up. I went, which you had just mentioned, I went over to Germany for like 4 months, the Hanover Scorpions. That was a lot of fun, and then I ended my career with the lovely Jeff Sharples there, who's on the phone with us, on the Zoom with us. But I went to Detroit's camp in '99, and I thought I had a team made, but unfortunately, I was the last guy cut. So I brought it back to Las Vegas, built a house, and retired out here, and just been hanging out here in the lovely sunshine.
That's awesome. In '99, you're cut by Detroit, and where do you end up?
I just came back. I talked to Scotty. He wanted me. He said, they got to give a couple guys a chance that were in the minors. Do you mind playing a little bit in the minors just to see if anybody gets hurt, anything like that? And I just told Scotty, you know what, I'm done. Either I'm on the team or I'm heading back to Vegas. I built a house, and that was it.
So you finished that after that 99, and had you already had the thought that this might be it, or were you still ready to go?
That was it. I because I came here to Vegas, played for the Thunder. They folded up that year. And then, I went to Hanover for a few months. At the end of the year, it was February, March, April, May of '99. I was in Hanover, and then I came back here and went to Detroit's camp, and basically it was a walk on, and I said, hey, if I make the team, give me a contract. If I don't, see you later. And that was the way it went. They wanted me to go to the minors, but I was like, no, I'm not going to the minors. My career's over with.
You're not.
So I built the house here in Vegas and started up hockey here.
Hey, Bridge, I got to ask Lord Bag. Lord Bag, do you want to keep asking on the line of Detroit questions? Because I got a million of them for Bridge because I was there for part of it with him. Or do you want to back up and get to this after?
No, let's stick it all along.
Okay,
Detroit.
okay.
You guys are ex-Detroit. You guys were in Detroit together. So let's get some stories and some what was going on there.
So let me just give a little bit. So when Bridge is talking, and Stumpy, I know everyone calls him Stumpy except me, and we already talked about that. But so I'll just say Randy and I were in Detroit's camp. Kenny Hall was the GM. When he says Scotty, he's talking about Scotty Bowman. So, but what was really cool is that Randy was the best player in camp that year. It was unbelievable. We had a lot of fun. Now, I want to talk about the Thunder, though, Bridge, because you came back after, before we get to Scotty and his stories, after you came through camp and you had a great camp, you came out and signed 25-game tryout contracts with the Thunder, right? Isn't that how that worked? Or how did you sign before you went over to Europe? How did that all work?
No, it was funny because it was 98. I signed the 25-game contract with the Thunder. So it was funny because there was a few NHL guys there, and Buffalo had bought me out. At the end of 98, they bought me out. I had another year. So then every team in the IHL wanted me to go play, Grand Rapids, a bunch of teams. And I'm like, well, I didn't really want to go anywhere other than Vegas because my wife's two brothers lived here. We'd come here every All-Star break and the end of the season. We'd come to Vegas just to hang out for a week, get the sunshine in. So Vegas was my first choice. So then I was calling Bobby Strom prior to the season, and he's like, no, we're all set. We're loaded because they had Peter Nedved, Jeff Jomp, a couple other guys that were really good in the minors. And so he felt they were loaded. So I'm like, it's a bummer. All right, well, then I got to think of something else or just kind of hang low. And their first weekend, they absolutely got destroyed. Like they lost like 7-1, 6-0, and like 8-2. So he was blowing up at the first weekend. Bobby Strom's blowing up my phone. Hey, we need you. So I flew in the next weekend, and I played with Jeff Jomp and a young guy, one of the younger players, and we lit it up. I got a hat trick the first game. We won all 3 games, and he's like, "You're the savior. This is great, right?" So I had a lot of fun. Played with Peter Nedved and Jeff Jomp on the line, also here in Vegas, and that was right before Nedved signed with the Rangers. Right, he signed a big ticket with the Rangers, but yeah, that was just a funny story that they're all set, but they got killed the first weekend, and then I came in and only had a 25-game contract, and the team didn't have a lot of money, and they were already looking to fold up shop after that. So I played the 25-game contract, and that's where I kind of jumped over to Germany in February because my contract ended up, and they didn't want to re-sign me. The team wasn't doing good, and they're looking to fold up anyways. So then I went February, March, April, May to Hanover Scorpions in Germany, which was a lot of fun. So that's kind of how that story all came about.
How is it with you? I mean, I'm asking both of you and Jeff, at this. So you sign with an IHL team, but you said that Peter Nedved took off to the Rangers. So you're able to still sign with an NHL team while you're playing in the IHL? Like that overrides your IHL contract if they want you?
Yeah, the IHL was a little different. Like, you got the American Hockey League and the East Coast, West Coast back in that day, where
Right.
those were minor league teams of the big show, right? Of the NHL teams. Where the IHL there was maybe one or two were affiliated with the NHL, but a lot of them were independent teams. Like Vegas was an independent team. So, you had the Houston Aeros. You had a lot of good teams that were in big cities that got good followings, but they were independent teams. So, you'd sign a contract with them saying, hey, if I get, the opportunity to go to the NHL, you guys can't hold me back. You know what I mean? So all those IHL teams, they had a lot of, 2 or 3 NHL guys were on each team, especially through lockout years, which Sharps can tell you, through lockout years, they would always recruit 2 to 3 guys per team, NHL guys that, were on a lockout. So it was nothing new to them. And that was basically what Peter Nedved was doing. J.F. Jean was doing. He was with the Phoenix Coyotes at the time. So, they were, they had a lot of those deals like that, and they knew that was the scoop. They were just happy to get the NHL guy for however long they could get him for.
Yeah, and most of the time now, like most year, like for example in Vegas, you got the Henderson Silver Knights. Well, that's directly affiliated with the Golden Knights.
Different. Yeah, the eye was different.
But the eye is different. But you still do have guys. Like Gage Quinney this year, Vegas boy, and he's played for the Knights over the last 3 or 4 years, some games. Gage, and he was with them in the bubble. He was under an NHL contract. This year, he was only under an AHL contract. So you do have, say, like, Randy was saying, you do have guys that are, say, almost like independent contractors, right? You can go out and sign guys just to your American League team, and teams throughout the league, the American League now, they do that. But yeah, the IHL had some big names come down. Like Curtis Joseph was here in Vegas for a while playing goal for us. I mean, this guy was perennial all-star in the NHL. It was really interesting. And, another thing that people might not know of, because I signed some too, is Bridge was talking about the 25-game contract. Hey, Bridge, like a 25-game try. What is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was funny. Strummer, and like I said, when they were just going to sign me game to game after that, and I just said, nah, I'm going to sign game to game. You either give me another 25 or forget it. But the writing was already on the wall. They were running out of money, and that was the scoop. So, and I was glad because I got the experience to go to Germany, that Hanover Scorpions, which was pretty neat to go over there and just see what Europe hockey was all about,
What was it?
That was good.
Did you enjoy that, or how was it over there in Hanover?
It was fun. I went over there, and at that time, 85% of the team was Canadian and American guys anyway. So everybody spoke English on the team pretty much. Now I think now they only have it where you can only get maybe 15 to 20%. Now there's a limit, but back then there wasn't. So that was a lot of fun. I played a ton of games there and just traveling around, playing over in Germany. It was pretty wild in that league, and it was a lot of fun for 4 months. And I took my whole family over there. So after that, I told any single guys that there's still a lot of single good players that weren't getting a shot in the NHL. Even J.F. Jean, my really good buddy, Phoenix traded him to Montreal, and then Montreal really wasn't giving him a great deal. And I told him, listen, single guy, go to Europe, man, go to Germany and play. And he did, and he played there for a few years, and he won the championship. He was MVP, all that stuff. But he loved it over there for a few years too. So you can make a really good career over there, being an ex-NHL player, that's for sure. And even being a young guy coming up, you can do really well over there too.
Hey, Bridge. So, you were kind of a puck possession guy. Like, you were a grinder, but you could make plays, really heady player, right? But I'm just wondering, because in the time that we came up and played, it was kind of dump and chase and run everyone through the boards, hold everybody up. Do you see from when you were in Germany back then, do you see that into today's game? Like when you got over there and started playing, were you shocked, or was the game back then a little bit more similar to what you were used to? Like, kind of interested on your impressions when you got over there. Like, you're like, hey, I got to change this, or I got to change that, or hey, no, I feel pretty comfortable.
You know what's funny is that they kind of would run like a blocker up the ice. You could interfere with guys. It's actually a lot more interfering than I thought. I thought it'd be a wide open game over there, but it was like they were trying to be like the North American at the time. It was weird because I expected it to be wide open like the league is, the NHL is now, and couldn't touch anybody. But over there, it was the same similar style that we played, and it was even sometimes more interference, I felt. And I just was surprised by that. I mean, that was a great question, because if anything I was surprised by is that it wasn't as wide open as I expected it to be, but, nowadays, obviously the NHL is wide open, free flying, and you got to be able to skate. You got to be able to skate and fly around. Nobody ever stops out there, though. I mean, the teams that play their position, obviously these final remaining teams, they play a solid team game in position, and I think that's why they're the final four teams, because they play a good team positional game instead of, look at Edmonton, free flying, but they weren't good in their own zone, Colorado, they were free flying and, obviously won the cup last year. I was surprised they got beat, but they had some injuries, but their team and defensive play just wasn't there. I mean, you see the game last night, 1-0. What a great defensive team game by both teams. Fortunately, you got Bobrovsky is just in a zone. He's in another world right now. I predict, hopefully I think it's going to be obviously Vegas and Florida, but wow, they got to solve Bobrovsky or he's going to win the cup for them. I think no one can score on this guy right now.
He's definitely, well, he's been saving it up for 5 years.
Yeah, what was it? He got he won the Vezina like 5 years ago or whenever it was. He won the Vezina, didn't he? He won it once or twice, and then
he's just been holding on.
That maybe it's a contract year, right, Sharps? You know the deal. Sign a 5-year deal. You just float around, or like Tim Thomas and just leave the game, or like some of these goalies, you never know. They're goalies like we always talk about. They're a different breed. But Robin Lehner, right? What happened to Robin Lehner? The guy signs a 5-year contract, never to be heard from again. I don't know. I don't get it.
Hey, Bridge, I want to back up a little bit. We want to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to talk about your time, because I was fortunate enough. I wasn't there a real long time, but to play for an original 6 team. You played for an original 6 team in the Bees, the Boston Bruins, and they loved you out there, and you still got all these guys that you keep in touch with. Tell us a little bit about being a part of the Boston Bruin organization and what kind of separates them from a lot of the other teams in the league, because their success has been basically since you were there and before, and they're still having an incredible amount of success. It doesn't necessarily translate every year to a Stanley Cup, which their last one was 2011. But what made playing there special, and what makes that organization so special?
Yeah, I think that comes from all the original 6. Obviously they expect more out of you, but it is the leadership. There's no doubt about it. When I'm playing under Ray Bourque and Bobby Orr's hanging around, Derek Sanderson's hanging around the rink. There's just so much history there, and these teams they pass it down through the years about how to be a leader and how to, you got to have fun at times, but you got to be able to pick your spots. I think a lot of the younger teams, like a really good example is, I'll bring up Jeff Jump again. He played for the Ducks, when they first came into the league, and, Paul Kariya was a captain, being an 18, 19-year-old kid. There's really no leadership there. Not his fault. He's just that young, where that team they actually were a good team. They ended up beating Detroit the 1 or 2 years there in the playoffs, but they had no leadership at all. There was just one big party out in California. Whereas you're having fun, you're winning games, everybody loves you. You go out to the bars and stuff and everybody's buying you drinks. Why, how can you not have fun? Whereas in Boston, you still did the same thing, but you picked your spot. If you had a game in 2 days, you weren't out boozing it up and having fun and things like that. Like the leadership, like Ray Bork. All right, boys, dinner's over. We had a beer or two. Let's go. We got to go back to the hotel. And you're held accountable by these legends, right? So, you got some young, Paul Carrillo was a great player, but at that time, you really, as a 25, 26-year-old player that, you got traded or you got picked up on waivers from, because an expansion team, you really listening to guys you don't even know, right? They're all thrown into a mix. And these younger guys nowadays, they don't have that leadership that we had passed through the generations. It's getting better for every team now because teams are longer in the league, and obviously, but the biggest difference I felt was that we had the history of leadership and it was passed down through the years.
Hey, so you talked about Ray Bork and Bobby Orr, obviously two legends, especially in the game, but in Boston. Who would you say, Bridge, when you look back at who had the biggest impact on you as you came in as a young kid into the Bruins organization, who had the biggest impact on you? Because a bunch of you guys kind of came in at the same time and, you guys kind of were footloose and fancy free, but who'd you look up to? And, who was kind of like a mentor, would you say?
Yeah. And obviously we had a great team. We should have won the cup probably in 1990. I mean, 88, we played the finals against Edmonton, and they had the powerhouse. They swept us 4-0. And then that summer, Gretzky got traded to LA. But, 1990, we won the President's Trophy, and we were the number one team. We played them in the finals again in 1990. We had traded Billy Ranford for Andy Moog, so it was a hell of a trade for both teams. But in the first game, which you talk about, you see Florida game against Carolina goes to 4 overtimes. Ours went to 3 overtimes, and Peter Klima scored the winner in overtime. I mean, we outshot them like 50-25, both games in Boston, but that triple overtime, and then they beat us the next game by a goal or two. It was frustrating, like Carolina is going through right now. But we didn't win the cup there. But yeah, Ray Bork was such a leader. Cam Neely, look, he's the president of the Bruins right now. Just again, great leadership. And I just think that everybody came to the rink to play every game. But from that leadership, like Ray Bork, he was a superstar. We know he's an NHL legend, but he took everybody under his wing. He wanted you to be a part of the team, no matter, when I was a rookie, young kid coming in, they would pump you up and they wanted you to play well. We had Lyndon Byers. We had a tough team. Lyndon Byers, Jay Miller. I mean, we had some great players, tough guys, but could play the game, and I think, you see they're lacking some, and now there's so many high sticks and just tap the guy and, they're penalties now, which I get it. They're penalties, but back in our day, drop the gloves, fist it out. They didn't really call any real touching the hands and stuff like that. They've certainly opened up the game, but every player you had to be tough. You'd have maybe, obviously you had Gretzky and company that didn't need to be tough. They were the best players, but they had toughness around them, and you didn't mess with those guys. Every guy on every team knew who to stand up for and take a punch for and all that stuff. But yeah, we had a lot of great all around players, from, like I said, Ray Bork, superstar, down to, even I started out 3rd, 4th line plug and worked my way up 2nd, 1st line, but just a lot of good history and a lot of good players that knew what it took. Their heart and soul was the Boston Bruins,
You talked about everybody had to be tough. Anybody that you ended up in a scrap with that you still don't like to this day?
What's funny is, I just Montreal, I hated Peter Sabota and Chris Chelios, but I've had beers with them since, and we laughed at all. They hated me, I hated them, but we respected each other so much. One thing with those guys, though, they were dirty. I scored a goal. I remember scoring a goal and had my hands up for 3-4 seconds. Sabota comes in and cross-checks me in the face and breaks my nose, So to me, I was actually dirty to those guys back when I got my moments. The next game, we got in a brawl, and I just came around the pile and found him and suckered him from behind, which I would never do stuff like that, but he did it to me, so payback's a bitch. But, that's the way the game was back then. I mean, you see the game last night, they're scuffles after every whistle, but,
right.
They're, back in our day, there was a lot more than just a little scuffle. There was 3, 4, 5 guys squaring off, and it was a tough game. I mean, it's still a tough game. There's no doubt about it, but it's just a lot more freewheeling and I don't know, and Sharps can attest to it. It just seems to me the game, I'm not going to say it's got softer, it's got faster, but it is a little softer because they want the game to be faster,
I think
you bring up the little scuffles that happened back then are full on brawls right now. That's the difference. Like the scuffles back then, everybody.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of them, and they went down. I remember against Montreal with the brawl, and it went through our bench, down the hallway, underneath the stands. It wasn't like the '70s free for all where those guys, the Broad Street Bullies, Philadelphia, but hitting guys over the head with the sticks. But it was scraps and fights, and you scratched and clawed for everything you could get, and it made a difference.
It's funny.
Anytime you're playing the Boston Bruins, you're going to get hit every game, and this guy's going to possibly fight me every game, and it could be Ray Bork down to Randy Burridge.
Hey, Bridge. What's funny is Swoboda comes and cross-checks you in the face. Right now, they probably player safety probably get a 5-game, 3 to 5 games. Back then, did he even get a cross-checking or an interference call or anything? Or
right, it probably was just a 2-minute, I think. At the time,
he probably didn't get anything. But the game has changed, and I wonder if the game. Ian and I talk about this all the time, but the NHL has all the sponsorship money that they never used to have now, and these big sponsors that are a part of them, and there's a lot of pressure on them. And you talk to the refs. We had Dean Morton on, and Morty was like, when they can miss a TV timeout, they're thrilled as refs because that means they haven't been involved in the game. And now you see most of these games, like Vegas and Dallas, go to overtime the other night, and the game was only 2 hours and 47 minutes. We used to have regular season games that sometimes would be over 3 hours back in the day. So do you think the sponsorship has put pressure on the league to kind of change its way and just enact these new policies and rules to make sure that we don't lose people, because no one can keep their focus on anything anymore, right? So they need it to go fast.
Yeah, I think, and I, not just hockey, but which we see throughout all the sports. I mean, baseball now, they got a pitch count, right? Well, they always had a pitch count, but they got a timer on every pitch now. So they want to speed up baseball. I mean, to me, hockey's so exciting. You can't leave your seat or you miss something. Where baseball's a great game, but let's not kid ourselves. It's boring. You can, go for a beer and have a cocktail and come, or go to the bathroom and come back, and you didn't really miss anything in the past. But now they're speeding that. Yeah. But now they're speeding the game up for that. I think for the fans, for the sponsorship, and obviously all the sports are hooking onto that. The NHL. But
I think life moves quicker now, and people don't have the 3.5 hours to give. And I think the sponsors in the league are figuring that out. Like, people, they want to get people there because it's a 4 to 5 hour event going out by the time you get into the building.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, 4 to 5 hours, because if you're going to pay all that money for a ticket, I suggest, and I tell everybody that comes to Vegas here, you got to get down there for the experience. You're paying $300 minimum to $500 for a ticket. Get down there early, experience the whole event. So you want to get down there an hour before the game, which, you guys know outside, T-Mobile is it's a show in itself. prior to the game, and then you're outside for an hour, but you want to get in a half an hour before the game because then there's a show on the ice kind of before the main event, you know. So it's very entertaining. But yeah, you know, like you said, they want to shorten the game up because those fans are there an hour and a half prior, and 30 to 45 minutes probably to an hour afterwards to get out of there. But yeah, speeding the game up, I think it has made it better. They got to get rid of the scuffles. I mean, it's part of the game, especially in the playoffs. They don't deal with it. They don't put up with that during the season. Any scuffles, they just give guys penalties, right? Touching. But in the playoffs, yeah, they let the scuffles go. They let a few go at the beginning of the game. But it's good that the referee, after the third scuffle, they don't listen to the ref. Give each guy 2 minutes and start throwing out penalties. So you can speed the game up there too without all those scuffles.
I know you like the game now, but I want to know, and here we're going to take this right out of the game. Which is the best logo that you have ever worn?
Yeah, I don't know. I just, you know, the Boston Bruins is a legend, but I love them all. Washington Capitals, and then playing for the Kings, you know, with the black and, you know, the silver and the black and white. And then the Buffalo, which was pretty cool. You know, we had, you know, the old Buffalo Sabres was kind of cool, but the new one, the black, the red, and the white with the new Buffalo head was awesome. I love that. When we launched those jerseys, you know, we had a sellout stands for practice at you know, on our rink in Buffalo, and it was telecast through like to 60 countries around the world, just on us just unveiling our new jersey, the Buffalo Sabres jersey, which I thought was awesome. And you know, all these teams keep going back to their old relics, and they're making them different jerseys. I mean, hey, it's a money maker and bringing all this stuff in. But yeah, the Buffalo Sabres, when we launched that, I loved that new uniform. Was really, really cool. But every one of them holds certainly a place in my heart of the teams I played for. You know, the Boston Bruins going to the finals twice. You know, Washington Capitals playing with Dale Hunter, which, you know, you think about, you know, what Pietrangelo did, you know, at the end of, you know, against Draisaitl. Remember, he kind of just tapped him in the hand at the end of the game. I mean, it was a one-hand. It wasn't a two-handed slash, but he got thrown out of game, like we talked about. You know, they hold you more accountable. Yeah. Where, you know, you remember back when, you know, Pierre Turgeon scores the game winner there in New York in the island, went in the corner and Dale Hunter just rubbed him completely out. It wasn't just a tap on the wrist and getting tossed for a game. He rubbed him right out, right? After they beat us out of the playoffs. But, yeah, I mean, every team's been great. LA, I played with Gretzky and Curry on the line. I mean, we could ask for more there. And then playing in Buffalo with Pat LaFontaine and Dominic Hasek and, you know, Barnaby, May, and Ray and all those guys. It was good.
Were you in Buffalo when the owner didn't have any money?
Yes, they kind of switched around a little bit there. It went from, you know, the Knox family, Seymour Knox, and unfortunately, you know, he had passed. You know, right after we had a great year, Teddy Nolan was coach of the year, and he passed away that summer, and it kind of messed everything up. That was the year that Teddy Nolan coach of the year and doesn't get rehired back. And I think, you know, if Seymour would have still been alive, he certainly would have been rehired back because he loved Teddy. That's what I heard and felt anyways. But yeah, then it went to was it John Regis, the cable guy
you know,
was the cable guy. And he didn't have the money at the end of the day. And now, you know, in comes,
were you there when
the main owner of the Bills
didn't have money?
You know what? That was right on the cusp that they bought me out after that. That was right after it was happening there, but you know, guys were still getting paid. Everyone was getting paid, but, you know, then I got bought out. So
hey,
I moved
Bridge,
on from that.
I want to ask you, well, you brought up Teddy Nolan, coach of the year, then he never really surfaces again. Tell me, who was the most impactful coach on you? Obviously, you brought him up, so he must have had some impact on you. Maybe why you thought he didn't get hired again, because he was kind of like new school. Like he had you guys playing on your minds. Um, who was the biggest impact? And you can go back to junior for that, but when you look back, who were some of the favorite coaches you had? Because you had some classic coaches.
Yeah, I mean, I started out with when I got called up to the Bruins was Butch Goring, and I loved him. Butchie loved me. He just goes, he loved because I was a small guy and fly around, but Butchie didn't last long. And then in came Terry O'Reilly, who was all lunch pail, everybody. He didn't care who you were. Cam Neal, you're scoring 50. I don't care. You better run that guy over and fight, right? And be tough. That was just Terry O'Reilly. I love Terry because he wore his heart on his sleeve, and he was ready to brawl anybody, any fan, anybody at all for the team, even as being a coach, So, one time we were in the playoffs against Hartford, and they were up 3-1, and it looked like they're going to beat us, but we came back. We ended up beating them 4-3, but game 6, it was in Hartford, and we had to go back to Boston. How you back in the day, you played back to back, right? You didn't have the day off. You played the next night. Well, they had a car parked right as a tunnel. You couldn't get out. You couldn't get out of the Hartford Civic Center because they had a car park right on. Basically, hey, we'll leave it there all night. They'll get stuck here all night, whatever it was. Terry O'Reilly gets out, grabs a tire iron from somewhere off the bus, goes in there, smashes the window. Everybody's out there. They're moving the car out of the way. Terry O'Reilly was just great. I mean, he was just a classic heart and soul guy. It was, he smashed in the window. We moved his car out of the way. It was like comical, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Terry O'Reilly was just awesome. It was, as a coach, and that's where I felt Teddy Nolan kind of was the same mold as Terry O'Reilly, not as same mold. I mean, Terry O'Reilly would vocalize it a lot more and act it out a lot more, where Teddy basically, you knew what he was thinking, and he wanted you to be a lunch pail and work. Like, we were the hardest working team in the league, and we ended up first place in our conference that year. That year he got coach of the year. We had a great year, and it was a lunch pail, and we just all worked our butts off. So it was a classic, and those are my two favorite coaches. Terry O'Reilly was the best. He would always, anytime we had a day off, he'd come and play with the guys, right? Anytime there's a day off, he always made sure he was playing, and he was playing hard. He wouldn't wear shin pads, so we'd be like, oh, he get hacked and chopped in the ankles, I think. I don't know, but he would always, he just loved it. He just loved being with the guys, and he'd let my brothers come out anytime we had a day off. My brothers would be on the road or even in Boston. He'd say, yeah, bring them out. So he knew all my brothers really well, and he just treated my family great. And he's just, one story. I don't know how much time I got here. I can give you a million stories, but
We got all kinds of time, Bridge.
we had the morning skate. This is after Buffalo won the first 2 games in Boston, right? And they were, it was the first round of Buffalo. They had all the brooms out in Buffalo that they're going to sweep us. So then we won game 3 in Buffalo, and then we ended up winning game 4 in Buffalo. But after they won the first 2 in Boston, the Bruins fans started pouring beer over the glass onto the Sabres bench, right? So now we tied up 2-2. So now the Sabre fans start pouring beer over our glass, right? Well, sure as Terry O'Reilly's losing his mind up on the glass. Well, one of my brother Joel, who was a little cuckoo like Terry, like we called Taz, Tasmanian Devil, obviously. There was him, Gordy Kluzak, and Lyndon Byers. We called them Snap, Crackle, and Pop, Rice Krispies, but they would always lose their mind. But anyways, my brother was in the stands, and he came flying down, and you see it on video. He actually got more video that year than I did in the playoffs. But they show him. He's like, "What guy?" And Terrell Riley's pointing. You see my brother Joel dive like 4 rows and starts punching the guy. And Terrell's like, "Not that guy. This guy." He starts fighting another guy. And
that's funny.
And oh, it's pretty wild. It's on there. We went to the finals that year, 1988. We lost against. But our video at the end of the year was called Black, Gold, and Glory. And my brother Joel had just as much play on there as I did. They said, not just on the ice did it get physical, even in the stands of Buffalo. And you show the video of my brother Joel diving down there. So it was pretty amazing because he ended up getting arrested, and then we're up 2 games, or we tied it up 2 games apiece, and we're heading back to Boston. Well, Terrell Riley comes back to me. He goes, "What happened to your brother?" I go, "I heard he got in jail." So Terrell Riley goes right back up to Harrison and Tom Johnson. He goes, "Hey guys, we got a detour. We got to go bail Joel Burridge out of jail." So this is unbelievable. So the bus, we go off wherever it was, a couple miles off the highway. We go to the cop shop. Imagine they're sitting in there, and all of a sudden this bus pulls up, and they're all like, "What's going on here?" So the guy, they're in the back playing cards. I hear the story years later, and he's like, "Yeah, there's a bus out there. Who is it?" He goes, "That's the Boston Bruins bus," right? So Harrison and Tom Johnson go in and bail my brother Joel out of jail. He gets on the bus. The whole team gives him a standing ovation.
Oh,
and then we drop him off at his house on the way to the airport. It was just pretty surreal. It was pretty wild. So that was his claim to fame. But that's why I love Terrell Riley. He was just a down to earth, salt of the earth guy, and he just. Yeah. That's why we were so close. Should have won in Boston, but we didn't. Even Ray Bork said that. I congratulate him after all these years, but after he won, in Colorado, ended up winning the cup there in 2000. I'm like, "Hey, congratulations." He's like, "Man, Stumpy, we still, I think every day we should have won it in Boston. We had the team. We should have won it in Boston." And obviously he ended up doing his parade with the Stanley Cup in Boston, even though he was with the Avalanche at the time, which is pretty cool. But anyways, yeah, I love Terrell Riley. You're talking about coaching, and I had to go into that story because he was awesome. And Teddy Nolan was the same mold.
Bail you out. They'd bail your brother out.
Yeah, isn't that crazy, man? Oh, there's still another hour of that story. You'd be amazed, about that story I found out 25. I mean, you can always cut this out, right? But this is a funny story. So 25 years later, right? Pagula, now he owns the Sabres, right? He owns the Sabres. He owns the Bills. And just as soon as he bought the Sabres, part of the French Connection, you got Gilbert Pereira, Rennie Robert, and Rick Martin. Well, Rick Martin passed away within a month of him buying the Sabres. So he's true blue hockey fan, true blue Buffalo Sabres fan. That's why he bought the Sabres. He owns the Bills too, but he goes, "All right, before anything else happens to anyone else, I want to get anybody that played 1 game or 1,000 games with the Buffalo Sabres, come on into Buffalo." So we went there, and I think it was 2011. At the end of the year, it was the last game of the season. They're going into the playoffs, and they had anybody and everybody. So there was probably 50 of us there. Rick Vive was there, even though he's big Toronto, but he played for the Sabres. Parts of the French Connection were there. Just anybody that played 1 game without it was a lot of fun. So we go in there, and they actually had us come into the rink, and there's a bunch of limos out back. So we took the bus from the hotel. We got to the rink at like 5:00, and they had a tent just inside the back entrance. So they go, "All right, guys, just have a few cocktails here." And then every 10 minutes, 2 to 3 guys jump in a limo, and you're going to drive around to the front of the rink. Right. So it was like the Oscars. Like they had a red carpet, and they had a red carpet. So we drive around to the front of the rink, and I'm hanging out. I'm in the limo with Pat LaFontaine and high-fiving all these fans. So I get down the red carpet, and it's like 10, 20 fans deep, sign a bunch of autographs. So I get to the end. Of the rope break, or the end of the rug, and about to go into the building. And a security guy goes there, "Hey, Randy Burridge." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Your brother made me famous." And I'm like, "What do you mean my brother?" He goes, "Your brother, Joel Burridge." He goes, "I'm the cop that arrested your brother back in the day." And he goes, so I get the back. So imagine if I get the back side of the story 25 years later. He goes, "Yeah, we're sitting in the cop shop playing cards, and the bus pulls up, and we're like, what the hell? So they're like, yeah, we came with bail of Joel Burridge. They're all looking at each other. They're going, who in the world is Joel Burridge? These guys are bailing him out of jail. Well, anyway, he goes, your brother made me famous. He goes, every restaurant was buying me free coffees and lunches and dinners for the next couple of years because the big story went out that I arrested Joel Burridge. So that was kind of a funny story on the backside.
Awesome. I like the way that they just take you around by bus and then they drive you. The same limo just keeps going around and dropping you guys off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, they had 4 or 5 limos and came. It was like the Oscars. It was unbelievable, and the fans went crazy. And it was the last game of their season, and it was probably the last time they made the playoffs, I think.
Oh,
crazy
man.
because the Sabres haven't been in the playoffs for many, many years. But
yeah, awesome.
So that was great at Terry Pagula, and he's a great owner for the Sabres and the Bills out there.
What do you do? We're gonna get you going. We'll get you going here. What do you do now? What are you up to? What does Randy Burridge do now?
Yeah, I'm with a couple of hockey guys. I small ownership of an animal healthcare company. I'm basically my whole title is I'm a sales rep. I got a bunch of states I travel around to, and we work with distributors. We got great products. We got the best products. And we work with veterinary hospitals and emergencies and sell our, basically, if you get a surgery, which we've all had, you get a needle in your arm, a tube to a pump. And so we sell all that to the veterinary clinics and hospitals. And on the side of that, I also, with Sharps and stuff, we coach a little hockey, NHL Learn to Play. And throughout the years, I've been in the real estate world, so I got a real estate license. I keep it up to date every year and sell maybe one house a year as of right now because I'm too focused on my animal healthcare stuff going on.
That's crazy. The animal healthcare. How do you end up in that? Is that something? Healthcare was something you were going into, or were you into?
Not at all. It was originally. Like I said, I was working in the real estate business. I was actually in the escrow title. And like J.F. Johnson, my best buddy in hockey, and then another guy, Rich Costello, played for the Leafs a little bit. Rich, he played a little in the show and a little in minors, but he was in the health industry, right? So it was on the human side. So, after several years, they're like, hey, they're recruiting guys. You want to work with the health system in Vegas? We'll just train and we'll need a rep in that area. So at that time, me and JF were coaching 16s and 18s in California hockey, the LA Selects, and Rich's son was on the team. So that's kind of how we all started hanging out together more. And that's how I got involved in the human health side of it. And then that transferred over a few years later. We got out of that, and now we're in the animal side. So that's how I got involved with that. And it's recession proof because the deal. Everybody goes out, especially over COVID. Everybody went out and got an animal, but the joke in the industry, right? You wife and a husband. The husband, you go to the doctors, and the husband gets diagnosed with cancer, and the wife's like, well, what's that going to cost? And husband's like, it probably costs us $10,000-$15,000. I got to get taken care of this cancer. And she'll be like, oh, you're all right. You can hang in there, right? Well, sure enough, if her dog's going in and, hey, you know what, the dog's going to die in a week, but it's going to be $15,000 to try to see it, she'll spend that $15,000 on her dog, right? Not so much worried about the husband, but certainly wants that dog to live.
That's good, Bridge, because I got a dog that needs a hip, so I'll be talking to you after we get off.
Right, like $5 or $10,000, and you're like,
like what? I think we know people, but I think to kind of parallel Bagsy's question and what got you into it. We all think we're going to play hockey until we don't know. We just think we're going to play it indefinitely, but we all have to get a job outside of hockey because 99.9% of the time, 100% of the time, you're a very young adult when you come out of the game. Even in your mid to late 30s, you still got so much time and runway in front of you. So that's kind of it, isn't it, Bridge? We all got to do something, right?
Oh, for sure. There's no doubt about it. I mean, what your airline pilot, Rod Buskis, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, some of these guys stay right in hockey right away. I kind of got away from it, but I started coaching little kids hockey, and it kind of came back around again. So now I started coaching some kids hockey. Now I'm involved in, which led to other stuff. The real estate and escrow business was all hockey related. It's funny that, yeah, of course we got to do something more. You obviously, you're an airline pilot, and I'm sure, you had to work hard for that, like I did on human and animal side of stuff. But you always get a little bit of break if they know you played hockey, and it kind of helps you out along the line. For me anyways, and I'm sure it might have opened a door or two for you, but yeah, there's no doubt about it. As life goes on, you get another 30 to 40 years to live after you retire. You're like, well, we got to do something.
Yeah, most of the guys that play the game are, they're good people, and they know how to interact, and they're team players, right? Because if they're not, then they kind of get cut from the herd pretty quick. But thanks, Bridge. Appreciate you coming on. I wanted to, I don't know, do you have time to tell the Scotty story from training camp before you go, or should we leave that for another day?
That's up to you. Just Scotty was obviously a legend, and we had a lot of fun. And I was in camp there, me and Sharps. But Scotty, at times, and I hate to say it, where he would be speaking along and he'd get distracted. I think those ingenious minds would get distracted. But we're having our training camp spiel, and he's talking about all the rookies and all this, and he would just go off on a tandem, and we would be like, what's he talking about? We had a good laugh and a joke that he's stumbling and bumbling, but he always came back to the main point. But he was on a different level, maybe mindset, where you'd lose track of what he was really saying for 5 minutes, and we'd be like, you look back at each other and say, what did you just say? And it would be me and Sharp, we laughed about that, because just a legend like that, and sometimes you just didn't understand what he was saying. But all in all, that was a good ending of my career, hanging out with Sharps and playing golf with Fedorov and Eiserman. Me and Sharps, I had a good ending to my career. I packed it in after that. So me and Sharps have a good laugh all the time about, the legend Scotty Bowman, and the way how my career ended. And yours kind of kept going on a little bit, right, Sharps?
Yeah, I went a little longer, but not too much longer after you. And we were both out in Vegas. I think both of us the day we figured out there was a team in Vegas we could actually play out here. I think most players are probably in shock, not as much anymore, because there's a lot of teams in the southern, kind of where the weather's a little warmer.
Right, all four finals, right? All four final teams are hot weather areas. Yep.
Yeah, they've all figured out how to handle that hot weather, and they still play at a really high level. Whereas, you were just in shock coming down from playing in the Northeast or Canada before. But thanks, Bridge. Appreciate you coming on with us today, buddy.
Yeah, that was awesome, and a million more stories somewhere in the future. But hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, thanks, guys.
See you, Bridge.
Bye. All right.
That was awesome. Sadly, we didn't have him on camera, but oh my goodness, those stories are great. I love the fact that you guys were chirping Scotty too, by the way. You guys just sitting in the back chirping him, weren't you?
So I might have told this story before, but so Randy and I are roommates in camp. Right now, these guys probably all have their own room, but back in the day, so him and I, Burridge and Sharples together. So and he's outgoing. He's a lot of fun. And sitting in front of us is Stevie Y and Brendan Shanahan and maybe Nicholas Lidstrom. So we're talking to Stevie because we know these guys, right, from years of playing. And then Kenny Holland gets up there and he loses his mind because I think Detroit got bounced in the first round the year before. Scotty gets up there and talks about three things. He talks about making sure that the charter is clean this year, upcoming, because they left the charter dirty. He talks about being on the ice, be at the rink at least 25 minutes before practice. So if practice was at 11, make sure you're on the ice at 11. And then he talked about, and I wanted to kind of segue that with when Bridge was talking about the French Connection, which was Joe Beaupro. Scotty talked about how much more money there is in the game now. And I didn't know this at the time, but Joe Pro in the 70s was making $375,000 a year, which was incredible money. But
huge.
as the meeting went on, Stevie put his head in his hands further and further and was shaking his head. But those guys won. Scotty won. And I mean, he's the top coach of all time, right? He's won the most. So we had a lot of fun, I think, mostly because we were in shock when Scotty Bowman started talking that he didn't really talk about anything other than the charter, being on time for practice, and how much money there is in the game now. And so we went out for lunch after that, Randy and I, and we laughed and laughed. And we laughed for 2-3 weeks together because we had so much fun at the camp. And thanks to the Red Wings, because they're a first-class organization, we had 24-hour limo service up in Grand Rapids.
Nice.
Traverse City. We were in Traverse City. 24 hours. No questions asked. So, and then we got to play golf with Stevie, Shanahan, Fedorov. Sergey was a great guy. Stevie's a great guy. And Shanny they treated us really good. And of course, Chris Chelios was there too. Chelly was super. So a lot of fun. But anyways, Bridge is a great guy. We'll have him back on.
Chris Chelios' daughter came out to the show this weekend in Chicago. Very nice.
Right on, yeah.
Yeah, she works for the Blackhawks. She does, and
nice.
So it was cool.
Right. Hey. So yeah, Scott was out this weekend. How's he doing?
He's doing good. He's getting funnier and funnier every time he goes on stage. I still tease him about every time I go on stage. I go, look how skinny his legs are. No wonder he couldn't stop a puck.
That's awesome. Well, good. We might have to have him back on before long again because he was one of our first guys, and be interesting to talk to him because of what looks like the dynamic just is shifted overnight in Chicago, right? I mean, it was the bottom of the bottom, and now all of a sudden they're on the rise just because of getting Bedard.
Word on the street is that Matthews is coming there as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I always thought Matthews would go to Arizona, but with what's gone on there,
nobody's going to Arizona now.
Nobody. They might be leaving, but they're not coming, which is a real shame.
It's a shame. But it's time. You can only do it so much. At some point, you got to wrap it up. Speaking of wrapping it up, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one thing before we go. I turned on to get a score the next morning. I didn't watch one of the games, and I turned on Sportsnet to get a score, and they didn't have hockey on the front page of their website at all. They had baseball, and they had the Leafs, talking about the Leafs exit interviews, but they didn't have the score. I had to go into another page and go on Scoreboard to get the score of the hockey game of the quarterfinals of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It does not make sense. It's just a shit show, that place. And that is why Toronto will never win a cup, because that's one of the places that owns Toronto Maple Leafs. Boom.
I went in there the other night too, and I get it. Sportsnet owns the Blue Jays and the rest of it, but I just baffles me. Like, that's the game up there, and the semifinals are going on, and you get like a little page paragraph right down below Michael Block, the PGA professional. I mean, it's kind of in the same header as that, which was an unbelievable story on the weekend, and the guy's done unbelievable. And I just love the story. But this is the NHL. This is Canada's game, right?
Bread and butter.
And just because we don't have any teams in it right now doesn't mean that we still can't support it. So I guess we got to we can't have it both ways, right? Would be the way I'd look at it. Let's support the game, because there's lots of Canadian kids still playing, and the league is better because of teams like Vegas and Seattle.
Vegas has the most Canadian players of every team in the NHL, right?
Yeah, and Florida. Like, this is good for the game globally, which means, I know. I was kind of, I wouldn't say I was shocked by it, but I was a little bit like, come on, like, you give them a little love, right? But that's the way it goes. So anyways, any shout outs?
Everybody that came out. A mom went in for her surgery on Friday, and as she was sitting in the pre-op, they canceled it. So
whoa. That was so crazy. I just pulled my earbuds out. They canceled while she was sitting there?
Yeah, well, she was in pre-op. So, so
Jeez.
she flew back up to Terrace the next day, and she'll be going back down at some point. Yeah.
Okay.
Shout out to my mom for not getting her surgery, but big shout out to the crowd on Thursday night who did a video for me. We'll play it. I'll give this to
Right on.
I'll send the we'll play it. Yeah, they're very nice. So big shout out to the crowd. Everybody came out in Chicago.
Okay, Mom, we're in Chicago almost. And I wanted to show you the people that are at my show tonight on Thursday excuse my language. And they wanted to say hi to you, and they wanted to tell you to have a great surgery tomorrow. I know you're not doing much, so be high. She was already bragging about being on fentanyl last week. And tell the doctors, show the doctors this video. Hey man, there's all these people will kick your fucking ass if anything happens to my mom. Anyways, I love you, Mom, and I'll talk to you tomorrow afternoon after you have a new valve in your heart, and that'll be fantastic. And then we're all going to Lindsay's birthday on Sunday. So get your drinking boots on. And by the way, that's Tamika. She's a CNA. And that is Kimberly. Can you guess which one slept with a white guy? Anyway. We'll see you on Sunday, Mom.
Okay, I'm going to shout out our old. Are you done, or we got more than Robin, or what?
No, just you told me I was done.
Okay, so I'm going to shout out our old friend, the Commander, Tom Monahan. He worked with LVPD for 30 years. He was a part of every section of LVPD in Vegas. Then he went on and worked in Washington, D.C. and overseas for years. He's worked with the Vegas Golden Knights now for 6 years. He was part of NHL security. Now he works with the team. Shout out to Tom, because I got the chance to visit with him last week. And what a great guy. And always looking out for others is what I would say about Tom Monahan. And, and don't go in the corner with him either, because he'll blow you up. You got to watch it, but on the ice. But yeah, shout out to Tom, the Commander. Good to see you, buddy. And love to all.
Love to all.